Hi, my name is Daniel Gardner, and I was the lawyer for Mr. James Burns Jr. in the Burns versus Masterbrand Cabinets Incorporated case. A little bit about Mr. Burns. He was from Macomb County, Illinois. He lived in a mobile home and he worked for Masterbrand Cabinets. So one day, while Mr. Burns was working, he was stacking wood onto a cart when he injured his thoracic spine. And when this happened, Mr. Burns said he could not work anymore and he filed for workers' compensation. Once he filed for workers' compensation, Masterbrand allowed the workers' compensation, they granted it, but they also hired Gallagher Bassett Services to look over the claim that Mr. Burns made about the injury and to deal with any of the litigation that needed to be dealt with. So, fast forward a couple years, we went from 2000 to 2002 now. So, in 2002, Gallagher Bassett Services hired a private investigator. So, they hired Metro Private Investigators, and an employee of Metro Private Investigators actually went to Mr. Burns' home and approached him on a false pretense, and he asked Mr. Burns questions about a missing juvenile in order to gain access to Mr. Burns' home and to videotape his movements. And Mr. Kennedy used a secret hidden camera in his fanny pack to videotape the movements of Mr. Burns, my client, and this was where basically all the troubles kind of started. So once this happened and they found out that Mr. Burns could kind of work and stuff like that, they stopped the workers' compensation. And once that happened, Mr. Burns filed a complaint to the Macomb County Circuit Court saying that in April of 2000 he suffered an injury while working, and this went through a whole court process. We basically fought Masterbrand and Gallagher and Metro on all these things, but it ended up coming out to an intrusion of seclusion. And basically what happened was Mr. Burns stated that he was harmed or he suffered like anguish because of Mr. Kennedy's false entrance into his home. And this motion that we stated that he suffered anguish got dismissed a couple of times, and then it finally went to the 4th District Appellate Court, where it got dismissed again, and the court said it did not recognize the intrusion upon seclusion as a cause of action. And basically, this happened, it got dismissed on this one, and then there was prejudice with it. So Mr. Burns and I appealed it again on the hopes that we could fight the prejudice that was involved in this case, and we finally won, and the decision was reversed and remanded, which means basically the whole case was reversed, and the Masterbrand would actually end up having to pay workers' compensation, and we actually won the case. So the legal question that I found was that, like, did the defendants obtain information conflicted with the intrusion of seclusion? and the people involved were Masterbrand Cabinets Incorporated and Gallagher Bassett Services and Metro Private Investigators. The ethical dilemma that I came up with was, is it okay to lie in order to get into somebody's home and videotape them and settle a workers' compensation claim? Is it okay for somebody to lie about that? This case is kind of like a reminder to, like, for employers that workers' compensation cases should be taken very cautiously and with a sort of responsible approach to make sure that they don't invade privacy of their employees. And I also think that this case is really important in understanding that people have rights outside of work instead of just in work, and that the employer needs to understand that and can't just do whatever they please outside of the work area. I would like to thank you for your time and thank you for listening.